Hello, I'm Kevin and I'm your moderator this evening. I'd like to welcome everyone to the presentation. This is our first webinar of 2022, hosted by the Blockchain Institute Ireland. Thank you for taking the time to join us this evening. We're honoured to have Mark Carraway of BlockApps as our guest speaker tonight. Mark will discuss non-fungible token technology in his presentation and provide us with some real use cases of the application of NFTs. You'll come away with an understanding of blockchain technology, some insights into smart contracts, answers to the question, what is an NFT, and some practical examples of how NFT technology is used. However, before we start, we'd like to give you a brief introduction to the Blockchain Institute and the work we do. Please allow me to introduce Typhon Karabagli, founder of Blockchain Institute.
Hi, everyone. My name is Typhon Karabagli. I am the founder of Blockchain Institute Ireland. Blockchain Institute Ireland was founded in the late 2018 with the aim of raising awareness of blockchain, of distributed ledgers, and how those technologies are impacting on society today. We do this by organizing events with speakers who are recognized as leaders in the blockchain field, and our approach, such as at tonight's webinar, is to encourage our guest speakers to share their insights, experience, and expertise on blockchain and how they are leveraging the technology to create value for their customers. In turn, we like our audiences to be engaged, and to that, and there are a couple of housekeeping rules. Thank you.
Thank you, Typhon. No doubt throughout Mark's presentation this evening, there will be some questions that come to mind. Can I ask you to hold those questions to the end of the presentation where they be addressed in the Q&A section? Finally, your invitation contains a link to a post-webinar survey. We'd be grateful if you can complete the survey after the webinar. Remember, your feedback is valuable and will allow us to improve our events going forward. So, with no further ado, now let me introduce you to Mark Carraway, who is our presenter this evening. Over to you, Mark.
Thank you, Kevin, and thanks, Typhon. We appreciate the opportunity to discuss enterprise NFTs today and are excited about the conversation. So with that, we'll start the presentation. So just a little bit of background on BlockApps. We provide the platform for business networks Our platform is used by Fortune 500 companies to create and manage programmable business networks. Really, our core value is to satisfy modern business needs related to speed, reliability, extensibility, and security. And we built the first Fortune 500 production supply chain application, first blockchain partner with Microsoft Azure, AWS, and Google Cloud, and are a founding board member of the EEA. In 2014, Kieran James Lubin, our CEO, ran the research arm of the Ethereum group as the Ethereum was getting launched, and realized at this point, in also meeting our other two co-founders, that the technology behind Ethereum was useful not only just for cryptocurrency, but could be leveraged in an enterprise setting, specifically the value lying in the stateful machine as well as the smart contract capabilities. So we were co-founded in 2015 and actually launched blockchain as a service as a category for the first time with Microsoft. In the last 5 to 6 years, we've worked with major enterprises to understand their needs related to blockchain and build and deploy some of the largest blockchain applications and networks in the country and in the world here. So we're very excited to be able to share some of these and how this relates in an NFT setting as well. Just about me, I'm the head of partnerships and director of business development for financial services. I have 10 years of experience in financial services, ranging from private wealth management and mortgage processing. Joined BlockApps in 2018, helped establish and grow the partner network to over 60 partners, including development, consulting, community, and strategic partners. And as you'll see about us, we are providing a blockchain platform. And so for us, having key partners is critical to our growth and success. So let's talk just briefly and make sure we're on the same page of what a blockchain is. In essence, it allows for the creation of a scarce, transferable digital asset, right? And so today we'll be talking about this from an NFT perspective, but obviously blockchain allows, for any kind of digital asset to be created. It also handles the double spend problem of accounting and economics. If anyone's familiar with reconciling accounts, basically this is had to be done because of this double spend problem. So blockchain enables this to be solved. And so you could treat blockchain as each of these 4 buckets, but for NFTs, really, it's helpful that they all work together. So it is a network. It does operate like a network. And I think this is where some of the growth is happening around network governance and rules around network capabilities and network growth. But it also does act like a database and ledger. A lot of times what we like to say is it's the data in flight instead of just a storage database. It's really the transactable data for business transactions. Yes, blockchain is decentralized, so there's no single point of failure. There's no single middleman that's creating and maintaining the entire processes. And for NFTs, I think the most important thing is it's verifiable. So people are most likely familiar with these, but just to make it clear, there's obviously public blockchains where all activity is visible to the public. Network members can self-identify but are usually anonymous, and network latency does not scale well as you're growing to a large amount of information. And then on the other side, where we come in and what we'll be talking about today is enterprise blockchains. And so it's a bit different because the activity is visible by network members only, but typically all of the network members are visibly identifiable because they've come together to create this industry or enterprise network. So all the participants are known, and typically there's lower latency as well. So let's just go over smart contracts and how it's related here. Smart contract is a program blockchain code that logs information into the ledger. The unique thing here is a smart contract can model many business assets, right? And for NFTs, for the most part, We hear about and see, assets in the sense of an investable assets, such as art or other investments. But smart contracts can model really any asset. So that includes a digital version of a physical asset, can create an asset around financial information, around invoices, around payments, can track and create assets around transactions such as trades or purchases, media, which I think is a big growing area, being able to create smart contract around pictures and songs for financial purposes, and even communications. So for the smart contract, the first step is to create the asset. So the asset's actually created with the smart contract submitted to the ledger. Members of the blockchain validate the smart contract and the asset, and network members can see the historical audit information based on the smart contract code. So I think this is a key point as NFTs grow in popularity. There's always the question of how you're able to track these across multiple platforms, across many different networks, and having that historical audit information is going to be critical for the growth and success of any NFT, as networks may combine or converge over time. The other critical aspect of smart contracts is there's really no limit to the type of properties that you can create and attach to an asset once the asset is created. So an example of this is certainly we're seeing Bored Ape Yacht Club is very highly sought after NFT. And it's not just obviously, for the asset itself, but some of the properties that come along with that, including, access to certain events, certain information, access to other members of the community. And really at that level of the smart contract, you can create any type of properties around the NFT that you'll like. And so this is very important from an enterprise perspective, because different industries have, different properties that are important to them. And when you're creating these NFTs or involved with NFTs, this is something you want to be very conscious of, or what are the properties around the NFT. Here you can see kind of a standard list of properties just describing the asset, the owner, and the state. But you can get as detailed as you'd want here. And we think the more detail you put around the properties, the more you're able to define the unique asset. As well, on the sale, the smart contract is updating that information. So there's certain information that will always stay, standard for the asset, and then there's other information that will be updated over time. So just a quick background on NFTs. NFT stands for non-fungible token, which means it's unique. It's non-interchangeable with any other assets, and it's stored on a blockchain. ERC20 was really the first, call it major upgrade for the enterprise or the Ethereum Foundation, and ERC 721 was really the first to define non-fungible tokens in 2018. Certainly there were earlier versions of NFTs that are not as well known. Even Bitcoin in 2012 had what they called colored coins, and CryptoPunks were also an earlier version, limited to 10,000 characters, and no two alike. CryptoKitties was really the first major revolution for NFTs, where you're able to adopt, raise, and trade virtual cats. And then as adoption became more prevalent, you saw many sports teams adopt NFTs because they're seeing them as the next step for virtual trading cards. There's many public use cases, collectibles, digital arts, games, and you're starting to see these communities form around these NFTs. And I think that's a critical piece we want to discuss a little bit more today, is not only the NFT itself, but the community around it, and how these are supported specifically in an enterprise space. For enterprise NFTs, they're leveraging the same underlying technology, but these are on permissioned blockchain networks. Typically, they're representative of real world assets or other pieces that the company may own. And a lot of times they're used where there's a need for traceability, provenance, or the ability to increase the value of those assets. For example, TraceHarvest mints seeds as NFT and it tracks them from manufacturer to processor. The nice thing about this, and we'll talk a little bit more about it, is utilizing blockchain technology. Companies can actually get to a lower than, or at least the least sellable unit. And so each unit does have a unique pathway, a unique process, a unique transaction, and a unique destination, which actually creates, the value for, an NFT. Where before blockchain technology, it was actually very difficult for companies to get to this low individual unit level for some products. But now with this technology and the ability to share that with their network, they're able to achieve that. So just talking about NFTs, and again, kind of comparing personal NFTs that we're maybe more used to with enterprise NFTs. When an individual is looking at buying or creating an NFT, typically there's an investment thesis or interest, right? So there may be something there that they say, this is going to help, for my family where we are positioned. You may see a lot of growth potential in the NFT. There may be an emotional tie to the community, to the token, or just you may have a strong personal belief, or maybe a good timing to buy this. So this is very similar to investing in any asset. With NFTs, I think having a much stronger tie to the emotional component as well. From an enterprise perspective, when enterprises are looking at NFTs, they're really looking at the risk reward. What kind of capabilities does this NFT either provide directly or enable the enterprise to leverage? And a lot of times, enterprises are not as quick to adopt as individuals. So I think, especially today where we are in the market, enterprises are still looking for simplicity. What is the simplest way we can leverage NFTs that will be beneficial? But in the long run, they'll also be evaluating this as part of their larger strategy in relation to traditional market dynamics. Maybe there's a tax opportunity, maybe there's a business opportunity, but this is really how enterprises are looking at investing or holding or creating or selling NFTs. The other thing is, focusing on capabilities and building asset value. So how do you build value for an asset that already has value today? So one of the ways, enterprise NFTs do this is speed of information, actually having access to real-time data. So if there's a transaction happening now, but it takes 30 to 60 days to verify, can we create an NFT that has value to give you that data today? And what is the value of that? And so that's one dynamic of creating business value for enterprise NFTs. Second is ecosystem alignment. And you see this a lot of times with early adopters of blockchain. They're trying to build the community or increase the value for the entire ecosystem. And so again, you can see kind of an example here with TraceHarvest and agriculture. The ecosystem, it can be aligned in more on the same page around the products by being able to track the entire history of the product. The third thing is certainly a transparent supply chain. So if you are purchasing a product, are you able to see everything that's been put into that product at the time of purchase? If you are, creating a product with multiple components, are you able to understand the story of your entire piece of equipment that may have 10, 20, 100 components? And then the fourth thing is new incentivization models. I don't think this is being discussed as much now, but it certainly will be. Having the NFTs available for enterprises gives them the ability to create new incentivization models, create new revenue models and revenue streams. And then the last is security. if there's that immediate tie into an NFT, you're actually able to see any issues in real time and have a lot more visibility and control over the assets that you have either created or purchased. Some examples of these are a barrel of oil and a carbon credit. Not all carbon credits are created equal. Leveraging NFT capabilities, enterprises can either create or understand or purchase carbon credits and have a full visibility into the life cycle of that. Another example is even healthcare information can be created as NFTs as well as bags of seeds that we'll see here. So what does a technology stack look like for NFTs? This is kind of what we've built on Strato, and it unlocks the benefits of both Ethereum and the traditional blockchain benefits. So you've got a blockchain base layer, you've got the enterprise blockchain layer with the smart contracts, consensus, and validation, and then the enterprise kind of generic layer that enterprises are expecting, right? Does this work in my traditional IT stack? Is it private, data that we want to keep private? Is there an authentication mechanism in place so that we have the user control, user management, so APIs for connecting to our other systems? And we've enhanced the Ethereum virtual machine with a solid VM that is faster and more compatible with Solidity. And so this is when you're thinking about an NFT kind of at the highest level from an enterprise standpoint. If you're a company in agriculture, unless your business is dealing with travel or entertainment in some way, you don't necessarily need to know or want to know about that industry. And so the way this is being created on an enterprise level is really kind of top-down, industry focused. So an NFT for a bag of seed doesn't need to have value for your hotel stay or your flights. So when you think about enterprise NFTs at the highest level, you really want to just understand, okay, what does the industry ecosystem look like? And obviously there is quite a bit of crossover in certain areas where you may have an agricultural company that has a large piece of land, and on that land they're doing safe water practices and safe disposal practices. Those become carbon credits that then could be purchased by oil and gas or other industries. So there is certainly some crossover here, but really, like you see at the top, the global business network is going to have your traditional core corporate functions, but then the industry network is really where you have those unique NFTs. And as we go one layer deeper here, just quickly giving some more examples around NFTs and applications for specific industries. We talked about agriculture from a seed and food perspective, certainly from energy, carbon tracking, and actually core mineral tracking. These are all very important from a healthcare perspective, medical credentials, or even clinical trials. In financial services, a number of companies are already starting to tokenize high value, unique piece of real estate so that not only you have a unique ownership perspective, but you also have unique capabilities to interact with that organization as well as the physical property. In travel, you can see corporate bookings and private jet bookings, and we'll talk about some of these others today. And just a little bit more under the platform. So this kind of, we're continuing to go a lower level here. You have those industry applications, and then you're going to have the global tools. Most industries have documents that need to be managed or some supply chain. They're having their invoicing and payments. So these are very generic components that can be applied across all industries and all NFTs across these industries. And then at the lowest level, again, you've got kind of the core platform for Strato and the base layer to build a blockchain off of. You've got the REST APIs, the virtual machine, the JavaScript-based smart contracts, and the messaging protocol. So again, this is what you would kind of imagine for a typical enterprise stack for an enterprise NFT. You want to have the blockchain components. You want to have the capabilities for this NFT to interact within the enterprise systems and as well interact within the larger industry ecosystem. So this is just one more example. If you think about ticket purchases, each ticket once purchased, should be unique. There should only be, one assigned to an individual, and each ticket should only be able to be sold once. Ticketmaster has the challenge, as do a lot of industries in different areas, of fraud. And so the ability for enterprises to create tickets as NFTs really helps eliminate some of those challenges around, fraud or, creating multiple assets that you're trying to sell multiple times that don't exist, right? So what they're able to do is not only prove that you are the sole owner of this asset, but they can prove the entire history and the creation of the asset or not, and verify if it's a fraudulent ticket by creating those tickets as NFTs. So again, this is kind of another look at the framework, and really what we want to highlight here is, again, NFTs, they can represent digital assets, it can represent investable assets, but they can also represent physical assets. So especially from an enterprise perspective, a lot of companies have large pieces of equipment, large physical asset, piece of land. These can be represented as NFTs as well, and make them more transactable, again, creating new incentivization layers, maybe securing the rights to that land and the ownership in a better way. But you can also take financial information. And so this can be as simple as, invoices or payments, vendor changes, anything around your financial situation that you want to create as an NFT, as well as operational data. So companies can create their unique operational processes as NFTs to better be leveraged within their enterprise, but also within their larger ecosystem. And as you look down here, I think the important piece is on the left side, the difference for the enterprise versus traditional consumer NFTs is the enterprise is usually built with different users and different groups within the organization. So defining the roles and the participants within the ecosystem, as well as the attributes that are important, is a key critical kind of first step when creating really your first NFTs on an industry system. After you've kind of built the industry system, you can create other NFTs that are aligned with the same properties. And then this is just kind of the lowest level here, the architecture overview of the platform. So as you can see, kind of in the lowest level, this is where, again, the blockchain layer sits, as well as the peer-to-peer network and the API that's able to connect to many different enterprise systems. And again, one of the biggest challenges with NFTs in the long term is, how do I verify this across multiple platforms? And the API being able to connect to multiple different enterprise systems is really the way to do that. And again, from an enterprise perspective, we're creating an industry ecosystem first, and so everything within that industry ecosystem, can be connected here and shared. And then, of course, we've got the customizable UI, so that different enterprises, they care about different components, maybe even of the same NFT or the same ecosystem. So they're going to have a different view based on what their priorities are. So we want to talk a little bit about wallets here. From an NFT perspective, I think it's more important because when you look at Bitcoin wallets, Ether wallets, any crypto wallet, they're typically very standard. There's one purpose, right? It's holding it's holding this cryptocurrency, it's holding an asset, right? So it's very basic properties in the sense of, I'm going to buy this, I'm going to hold this, I'm going to sell this or trade this, right? So I think from an NFT perspective, you're actually going to start seeing more capabilities around wallets. And if you think about what a wallet is, it's actually, a lot of times, and especially on the enterprise standpoint, it's the first identity on the blockchain. And identity and identity management are going to be very critical to get right as blockchain and NFT grows. But in essence, this is the first time, for somebody who has, let's say, one NFT wallet, this is the first time that your identity is attached to the blockchain. And as identity becomes a much larger value add and much larger capability, you'll start to see that your wallets may get connected to this growing identity on the blockchain. And as we talk more about into the metaverse, really, what is your digital identity? So we've talked a lot about assets, their digital identity, but really for individuals and bringing people to be able to leverage the capabilities of blockchain, you have to have an identity on the blockchain. And really, the main takeaway here is we want to make sure that you understand the wallet. A lot of times for an enterprise, for a portion of an industry, for a portion of a company, this is really their first identity on the blockchain, and could be used as a basic building block to create other identity related features or tie into something else down the line. So that's a critical thing that we want to cover. But also, again, the wallet is the portfolio and the storage of these digital assets. It enables enterprise users to manage and buy them directly, but also track the value of the holdings. And the big thing for NFT wallets, especially for the enterprise, is you want to make sure it's compatible with the systems that are important to that enterprise. So OpenSea, Super Rare, these are great exchanges for NFTs. But as you'll see, especially in the carbon markets, and as we're involved with kind of creating carbon markets, you want to make sure that your NFT, that maybe a carbon credit, is going to be compatible with the exchanges that are created in your industry. So it's very important to understand the wallet capabilities, but also where it's compatible, and aligning that with the enterprise's industry focus. And finally, we'll just touch a little bit on the metaverse, and then I want to make sure we have enough time for questions here for the rest of the time. Obviously, the metaverse is going to be a huge market, with estimates as high as over $1 trillion in yearly revenues. The metaverse is, in essence, an immersive digital world where, your virtual identity lies, right? And your virtual identity can gather together, you can work, shop, play, and explore. But I think it's also important to understand, before you dive into this, what are some of the challenges, what are some of the risks, right? And so if you are purchasing assets in the metaverse, or you're creating a system where you can purchase and share assets in the metaverse, do you understand, how that's connected to the larger ecosystem? And from a core metaverse perspective, do you understand the components that have built this digital world that you're now living in, right? So I think it's very important to kind of understand that as you're getting into this. But certainly it's a large opportunity. Everything that we do in the physical world, I know there's a place or already being built in the metaverse, and so NFTs are no different, right? They can represent assets in the metaverse. So as you're creating your avatar, your land, your apparel, your accessories, maybe you don't just tied to your physical identity directly. Maybe you create this digital wallet, this digital identity, and have things tied to specific NFTs. And even as the metaverse grows, you'll start seeing industry sectors and really focus areas for certain capabilities. But again, still gives you the unique ability to create, buy, and sell items in the metaverse. So it's in essence enabling the metaverse and digital economies. And as you can see here, Jeffrey sees the NFT market reaching over $80 billion in value by 2025. So I'll stop there and kind of pause for any question. Maybe turn it back over to you, Kevin or Tiffany.
Thank you, Mark. That was a really interesting presentation. Are there any questions there, Typhoon? Okay, just very quickly, Mark, just could you explain a little bit? I have an interest in the whole sort of carbon credits market. Would it be possible for you to just explain in a little bit detail about how carbon credits and the NFT works together from the accountability perspective?
Yeah, I think the key to focus on, before kind of diving into a large ecosystem challenge like that, is to really start at the source. And that's what we've done with TraceCarbon, is make sure that we have the ability to have that source data be put on the blockchain. So if you're talking about the carbon footprint of, digging up minerals, or the carbon footprint of a barrel of oil, well, where did that begin, right? And so it's very important to have that information first and use that as a basis to create, what we call the supply chain of data as that information moves down through the ecosystem. So that's the first point, is just making sure that the source information is valid and is available on the blockchain. The second thing, especially with carbon credits, is there haven't been so many marketplaces that are leveraging data all the way from the beginning to the end of the process. And that's really what's happening now, is these marketplaces are getting created. And what we're able to do from a TraceCarbon standpoint is provide that, again, that source verifiable data. So if you're looking at a barrel of oil, you can understand exactly what's been done to that, where it came from, and all the practices around that. So a carbon credit can be created either from having really good practices, or maybe purchase a carbon credit to offset practices that are not as beneficial from a carbon emission standpoint. And so I think where the market is today is a lot of these carbon credit NFTs are being created, but there's no single trusted exchange. And even we work with farmers who they're already doing carbon positive practices, and they're just realizing now that their activities are now an asset, right? So when we talk about new incentivization models, just by using drip irrigation versus something that is going to use much more water, that can be purchased as a carbon credit because you've created a carbon positive outcome. And so being able to link that back to an exchange, and the exchange is going to be linked to the investors, that piece is still being created. But the challenge with exchanges is, for the most part, they don't have enough source data. They may be missing something to get the total picture. And so that's why we really focus TraceCarbon at the source of that information. So when these exchanges are created, we'll be able to power those exchanges and provide validity to those exchanges for a company like BlackRock to put a stamp on something and say this is a tradable security. They may need an audit company like a Deloitte to go in and say, we've audited this trail. Well, we're going to have all that data available on the blockchain. And so instead of taking a year or two to audit the entire history of the carbon credit, you can do that in near real time. And so that also follows the tradable asset as well.
Hi, Mark. We have several questions. One of them is from Clinical Squared. And his question, how does the value of an NFT calculate?
That's a really good question. Every NFT is going to have unique value based on, especially from an enterprise standpoint, based on the industry ecosystem. So the value of that asset is really going to depend on, who are the parties in that ecosystem, and what are you trying to create. But I think that, again, one of the key things that drives value is having that source data, making sure that you understand from the beginning the entire history of the NFT. But I think this question also leads into the new incentivization models, right? So we don't know what a small enterprise is willing to pay to offset their carbon emissions, but we know that large oil and gas companies are willing to pay a lot more to offset their carbon emissions, right? So it really depends on the value that you're creating, what it is, and who's the end purchaser of that. And so just as with any asset, it's going to fluctuate quite a bit. I think the difference here, again, from an enterprise standpoint, when you're thinking about value, it's usually defined within the ecosystem in the industry. So I don't think you'll see as many violent swings in value as you may have with cryptocurrencies and other kind of personal NFTs, where there may be a community, it may grow, but the value, how to calculate is really just a function of what is the source input, and what is the willingness to pay, from who is the target purchaser in essence.
We have another question. I think it is from Hello World. How do you promote an NFT in a sea? I think it's probably OpenSea and other NFTs. So can you give us a little example how you can promote your NFT on OpenSea if you have knowledge about this?
Yeah, I think the best thing to do is, before you're promoting any NFT, is just understanding who your audience is, and just making sure that or who are you promoting this to, and having the focus be based on the audience. Obviously, with each exchange, they're going to have their own kind of capabilities and functions. And in our experience and working through some of these with real estate NFTs, the exchanges are going to promote the ones that they see the most potential in as well, right? So the best way to promote an NFT, honestly, is to create a really strong value proposition for an NFT, or a completely new, unique value proposition. And we're seeing this a lot because we're eliminating a lot of the costs around creating and maintaining and selling assets. And so because it's such a low cost, can you create a different incentivization model, some new way of creating revenue? And we're seeing exchanges certainly be very interested in the latest and greatest, but obviously, the largest with the most potential. And so the best way really to market the NFT is starting at when you're creating it, and having a strong purpose and a strong focus of where this NFT should be going.
We have another question from Rohit. Are exchanges like OpenSea private or public blockchain?
Yeah, so most are public blockchain at this point, because most of these exchanges are consumer to consumer, and so there's more protections that do need to be put in place for consumers. And so public blockchains provide the ability for some anonymity for the consumer. From an enterprise perspective, these exchanges tend to be more private, because the enterprise has a specific group of companies that they do business with. They have a specific industry, but these exchanges are typically on a public blockchain.
Okay, I think this is a hot item in the blockchain field, and shifting between the Ethereum 1.0 to Ethereum 2.0, and the proof of stake from the proof of work consensus. Will that make the transactions cheaper, easier, and will that have an effect on the NFTs and the strat, of course?
Yeah, I think certainly from a public blockchain, it does make things. It will make things cheaper and easier, and you'll see the ability to scale. With certainly less fees and less, more speed. From Strato perspective on BlockApps, we're a private and permissioned version of Ethereum. So we actually went through the same process about 6 years ago, moving into proof of stake. And then we actually realized there's a better model for private and permission enterprises around consensus, given that, again, they're known members to each other. So we actually use practical Byzantine fault tolerance, PBFT. And so it's already very cheap and easy to transact on NFTs on Strato because of this. And again, given that we're in the enterprise sector, there's no need a lot of times to stay anonymous because you're going to be sending an invoice to your known vendor already. And so because of this, we don't have a lot of the challenges around cost or scaling that the public blockchains do typically.
The question that is about the linkage between the digital and physical assets. And Gary is actually saying that there is a persistence problem. And how are you looking to address this?
Yeah, so if I understand this correctly, the problem being that you want to make sure that there's always known the physical digital asset to the NFT is always connected to the wallet, whether there's many changes. I think the best way to do that is, through just having redundancy and through, scaling the ecosystem and scaling the network, and also bringing in, other components and other pieces of technology that you're connecting to, right? So having that kind of persistence in cloud-based systems as well through some enterprises as well as on-premise persistence, I think gives the ability for that to stay persistent. And the other thing with blockchain, especially private permission version, if there's one issue with one area, one node, you can actually just take that node down, bring it back up, and it connects again to the system. So as long as there's one part of the system that still retains that information, you're in a good place. So just kind of thinking about it again from a traditional enterprise redundancy standpoint, just using decentralized nodes.
I have one more question that is from Facundo. Could the value of an NFT be devalued if somebody makes copy on the other blockchains?
I think the short answer is yes. As with any asset, it's the value is a function of supply and demand. With NFTs, right, it's meant to be non-fungible, right? It's meant to be unique. So if somebody's making a copy of that NFT on another blockchain, either one of two things happen that shouldn't really be happening. Is one, they've created something that really they don't have ownership of, so it's fraudulent, or two, if it truly was an NFT, maybe the original owner didn't have all the rights and permissions, or the other thing is it really wasn't non-fungible, right? You've created an NFT of something that can be fungible. So I think in short, it does, but you shouldn't have that happening if it's truly an NFT. But just having a copy of that same NFT on a different blockchain in itself doesn't de-risk the value, because it's still the same asset, right? So even though it's on different blockchains, you can't buy the same asset twice. So it's represented on a different blockchain, but it's not necessarily a copy.
Or question that's from Trinayan. Can identities be tokenized as an NFT for onboarding vendors or stakeholders in supply chain use case?
Yes, and this is actually a really great question and something we've been trying to spearhead the conversation around, and be happy to chat with you more about this, because we do see identity as a great NFT example because there should never be, more than one identity of an individual or even a group within a supply chain. So you can create an NFT for a vendor as the whole company, and then you create an NFT even for maybe their accounting or compliance groups to identify them as individuals. So I think this is a great example of something you could do as well.
We have another question that's from Raghavendra. In the case of a bill of lading on blockchain use case, would you think an NFT is needed for the BOL, or just a regular blockchain-based approach works?
Yeah, I would say my understanding of bill of lading is they're unique for that shipment at that point of time. And although it may be the same ship, same goods that they do every 3 months, it's still what makes it unique is the time and place, and especially from usually the port side, the signature, right? There may be a different person who's signing this, and so when you start thinking about all of the properties of, let's say you started this and said we're going to try regular blockchain. If you're going to look at all the properties, and you can see very quickly that you may never have the same properties again, it's probably better to go to an NFT. And one great example is just the timestamp and location, because even if it's the same shipment, same everything else, it's going to be on a different day. And having that traceability back to that single shipment can be very beneficial, especially when you look at maybe food spoilage or any kind of issues that may happen, any kind of fraud, any kind of security risk, national security risk. These are things that they're going to want that unique oversight to that one piece of, what was traditionally done on paper, the bill of lading. So I think yes, for the most part, but it's helpful to start with the regular blockchain approach first, if you think you can. But if you can create the NFT, you would want to do that in this case.
Okay. I think for so far we have no questions anymore. Maybe we can give a little bit time to audience. Okay, we have one more question. When do you need an NFT, and when do you not need an NFT? When is an NFT overkill to identify a digital asset, in your opinion?
Yeah, I think it goes back to kind of early NFTs and kind of the creation of NFTs. They're really collectibles initially, and not to say that that's all that they are going forward, but I think it's a good place to start thinking about that. And so, from an enterprise perspective, what are things that you would treat as collectibles, right? Very high priced assets, very unique invoices, very specific processes. So I think that when you're identifying a digital asset, if the more unique it is, the more you should really kind of focus on the NFT standards and creating that, because what the long term is for enterprise NFTs, just as for traditional NFTs, there will be exchanges created, and you want marketable assets that could live on an exchange, even if it's an industry exchange, right? So if we're all in the healthcare industry, sharing information can be challenging. Certainly there's regulations in place, but just because of how centralized a lot of data is in certain systems, being able to access that information in healthcare can be challenging, especially when you look at regional or areas that maybe have low income participants, where they don't have access to the greatest technology components to plug into the larger systems. So this could be an area where it could be beneficial to have an NFT as a low cost way to transact or share information, but you also want it to be something that will be valuable for an ecosystem, and that it can be transactable and it's not protected information.
I think one more question that we have here. That's very interesting. You have explained the metaverse, and Ken is asking, will there be opportunities for advertisers in metaverse, and how is that going to work actually?
Yes, I mean, we're seeing JP Morgan do this already, right? They were very proud to be early adopter of blockchain. They're very proud to have the first bank in the metaverse. And, the way banking is done now, the actual banking properties and functions can all be done digitally and remotely. You don't, for most banks who are, not so traditional, you don't need to walk into a branch, right? But what is a branch for JP Morgan? It's obviously a way to build customer service, but especially for what they've done, it's already advertising. So I think there's going to be huge opportunities to advertise in the metaverse. There's a huge audience of early adapters or early adopters who are already charging into the metaverse. And so if that's your target audience, that's where you're going to be advertising. So I think there's, with any growing market, there's always going to be opportunities for advertising.
One more question from Stefan. What is the most interesting enterprise NFT use case you have seen recently?
To me, I still think it goes back to carbon credits and carbon offsets. It's such a huge market. There's a lot of companies working on it, and it's challenging to verify the validity of carbon practices from many different industries, right? It's not just oil, it's not just agriculture. If you're buying a piece of luggage, that luggage came from some core material that was created to create that luggage. And are you able to prove whether that was a carbon neutral, carbon negative, or carbon positive creation? So I think just because of how diverse it is, I think that, is really the most interesting case. And in the next 3 to 5 years, you're going to see the carbon NFT marketplace really explode once we get the ability for, large companies to create a marketplace that has audited trail of history all the way back into the source, the first, creation of the component of the asset. So I think that's still the one that I get most excited about, and very happy that we're really focusing on that source data with TraceCarbon, and hope to be kind of the foundational data layer for trusted data in that marketplace.
Thank you, Mark. We are coming to the end of our webinar. Maybe we can receive one more question. Is it okay for you, Mark?
Yeah.
Okay. Then I'm going to wait if there is another question. If not, I will give the mic to Kevin for closing. Okay. Thank you very much for the questions. I will leave the mic to Kevin and Mark for closing section. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, Typhon. And Mark, thank you very much. That was a really, really interesting presentation. Let's say from a personal perspective, I have an interest in the whole carbon credits area. So I should certainly be looking up what you're doing and following what you guys are up to. As a follow-up from this presentation. Let me take this opportunity to thank everybody who attended. Thank you guys for the people that presented the questions, some very, very good questions there. Mark, thank you very much for your presentation. Again, very, very interesting. And I'm sure that the audience got a lot of value from it. Before I close, folks, there is a post-webinar survey that was included within the invite. If you could please complete that, and feedback on that survey gives us the tools for us to improve these type of events. So please, if you can, complete the survey. And everybody who does complete the survey gets a certificate of attendance. So without further ado, I'll close the webinar this evening. Again, just to say thank you very much for everybody who's attended, and we'll catch up with you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye.